Shortly after my father-in-law died, it became clear that my mother-in-law had increased in confusion and forgetfulness. My sister-in-law, who lived near her in Boca Raton, Florida, called us and said, "You might want to come down here for Easter Sunday. I think it would mean a lot to her." So my husband and I and 2 daughters flew from Vermont to Florida the day before Easter. Everybody was settled in, we were asleep. In the middle of the night, the light went on next to my side of the bed. I was startled. I woke up. There stood my mother-in-law. She was wearing a slip with a blouse over it. "Mother, what's wrong?" I said. She said, "Do you think this would be okay to wear to church?" So I got up and I said, "Let me help you back to bed, and in the morning I'll find you something good to wear to church." So I took her back to bed. The next day we went to church. She didn't seem to really care where we were or why we were there, but we went. After church, we were sitting in the living room. She said to my daughters, "How old are you?" They said, 11 and 13. "Oh," she said, "I'm 23. "Good," my older daughter said, but the girls were confused. They didn't know how to talk to her. We went to Lion Country Safari. My mother-in-law was in the back seat between the 2 girls. It was very crowded, being Easter week, and traffic moved very slowly. And really, at one point, was just stopped. We had the windows down. Off to the left, we see a giraffe. He's walking toward the car. He gets closer and closer. We're just surprised. And pretty soon, the giraffe stuck his head halfway into the car. We're stupefied. Not a sound in the car. And then all of a sudden, a voice pipes up. My mother-in-law said, "He looks quite a lot like Dennis." I need to tell you here that this woman was like a professional 1950s housewife. My mother was a musician and a teacher, not so much for housewifery, but all my mother-in-law's considerable intelligence went into running a very efficient household. I learned a lot from her. And that's why it was particularly heartbreaking when she went to make coffee one night after dinner. She used all the filters, she poured in a whole bunch of coffee, and then she poured water over the whole thing, all over the table and the floor. It was heartbreaking. My sister-in-law said, "Never mind, come over to my house and I'll give you enough filters and coffee for the next couple days." Okay, she lived 2 miles away. I knew the way. It was 9 o'clock, about 9 o'clock. It was very hot and humid. So the 2 girls and I jumped in the car wearing halter tops and shorts and drove over to my sister-in-law's house. She gave us filters and coffee, and we started home. And suddenly, I didn't know the way. I had nothing in the car except the 3 of us and 6 bare feet. No pocketbook, no money, no identification, no cell phone, because it was long before cell phones, and the gas gauge was on E. I was nearly out of gas. Well, I couldn't find any landmarks whatsoever. The houses all looked alike. The street names all sounded alike. Palmetto Drive, Palmetto Palm Circle, Acorn Palm Boulevard, Queen Boulevard. You get the idea. They all sounded exactly alike. I simply could not find my way. I kept turning down streets and back and forth, nothing. If you're familiar with Boca Raton, the city of millionaires, you may be surprised to know that it has some dodgy neighborhoods. I was surprised. I found them all. Yes, I asked directions twice. I listened very carefully. I followed them assiduously. Both times I ended up in the parking lot of the well-lit Boca Raton High School. My older daughter said, "Mom, we've been here before." "Uh-huh," I said. I was trying very hard not to alarm them. I knew my husband wouldn't be alarmed because he knew that my sister-in-law and I were big talkers, and he just figured we were over there yakking away. How did I get us in this untenable situation? I couldn't believe it. I just kept turning and turning, trying not to let the kids know. Finally, a landmark I recognized. Finally, nearly an hour later, I drove into the driveway of my mother-in-law's house. The girls jumped out and ran into the house, and I just sat there. And it came to me what you all have probably already figured out. This had been a visitation. The universe had visited upon me what my mother-in-law's life was like 24/7. No cues, nothing familiar, a very scary world. I was much more patient and understanding of her for the rest of the time that I was there. I'm kind of a hard nut, but I really believe that the universe is full of mysteries, and may I always be open to them. Thank you very much.